Good evening, everyone. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Tonight is Woke Wednesdays. We do this every single Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have a different topic every single week. And tonight, we're talking about what does it mean to be a black man. So my name is Herson Sanchez. I am the host. I'm a second-year doctoral student here at Florida International University. And so why don't we get started? So if y'all could introduce yourselves and tell us, how do you identify racially and ethnically, and also what do you do in your life, I guess.
Going from right to left?
Sure.
All right, well, good evening. My name is Kaim Saunders, a.k.a. Kai Speaks. I kind of am an entrepreneur. I started my own nonprofit for high school youth back in Philadelphia, brought it down to Miami. When people ask me, what am I just say black. And that's what I identify as, and, you know, with that term comes a lot of responsibility and a lot of, I guess you can call, struggle, is what a lot of people want to call it.
Good evening, I'm Brandon O'Pallaby. I am the CEO of Dibia Athletic Development. We promote excellence through athletics, and I'm the founder of Dibia Dream. Dream stands for Development Through Recreational Education for Athletic Minds. So we're a nonprofit that works with kids in the after-school program, scholarships to college, summer programming, and STEM Saturdays. I am of Nigerian descent, so as of the last 5 years, I'm Nigerian, and that's how I identify myself. That comes with different, I guess you could say, I don't want to say issues, but responsibility, and I understand that, so I have that on my back, and I move forward with it.
Hello, everyone. My name is Eric Gavin. I'm currently finishing up my last year at the University of Miami School of Law. I also am a consultant at the University of Miami's Launchpad, which is just about startups and helping them incubate for the alumni and the students that are there, as well as a operations lead at Venture Cafe, not-for-profit that focuses on startups and growing the innovation ecosystem in Miami. I'm African American. I'm black. I'm from Chicago. And that's how I identify myself.
Just.
This one. That was a hard pause. Good evening, everybody. My name is Jean-Carlos Simpson, second year doctoral student at Nova Southeastern University for marriage and family therapy, working on specializing in learning more about polyamorous and open relationships. I'm also a high school teacher at Miramar High School. I'm also a therapist. And I work at SunServe, primarily working with LGBTQ kids, trans-related populations, and also working with WPATH letters and so forth. I identify as Jamaican. I know I'm black, but I do identify as Jamaican.
My name is Xavier Greer. You could call me Zavi. I'm a student at FIU studying international business and a certificate in supply chain management. I'm the current president of Florida Caribbean Students Association, and I work here on campus in residential life, hopefully moving into higher education for my master's program. When people ask me, what do I identify as or who are you, I'm usually identify as Katishan, being from St. Kitts and Nevis. But if they ask me ethnically, I go to Afro-Caribbean. I do associate with African American struggle, but for me, it's not the African being the issue, it is the American, because I still have to check in at immigration every time I land on a plane. So there's a certain privilege that comes with citizenship.
Absolutely. So I'm just kind of curious, was everyone? Not everyone was born here in the United States. So you were born here? Was it? You were born here, because. And we can get into that later, just as, I mean, I go to Nicaragua, they're like, oh, you're American. Then I'm here, and it's like, I'm not American.
Yeah,
I was born here.
Right.
Yeah, yes, exactly, yes. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. So first and foremost, thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. So we got a lot of new viewers. Please ask questions, make comments. If y'all are interested in what they do, feel free to ask questions, ask comments. If you have questions for the panel, I think we'll pretty much take on any question. So let's get to it. What does it mean to be a black man? Whoever would like to start, let's get after it.
I mean, what it means to be a black man, I I would go from first like society's point of view, and then what it means for me personally. So
Okay.
like what it means to be a black man, how society views us is to be strong, to be you know, everybody expects us to not really have so many emotions that we have to really express ourselves with. You know, we have to be the providers. We have to, you know, we have to struggle to get everything to put on the tables, to, you know, be that arm for everybody to, you know, reach out to. And for me personally, I feel as though being a black man means to understand all those responsibilities and struggles and whatnot, and trying to figure out what it means for you on your own level and aspect. You know, trying to figure out how I want to put this. You know, people want us to be non-expressive. For me, it means that I need to be more expressive. You know, people think that we have to be the providers, and you know, we have to do this. I'm not saying I'm not going to be a provider just because people expect that of me, but I feel as though it's my job to, you know, argue that and debate that. So it's still like on Instagram, I saw that a post that it was a girl saying that why would I bring anything to his table when there's like he barely has a table to bring anything to, and I responded, why is it his job to always bring something to the table, and why don't you have your own table, and then you guys can put both your tables together? And that's what I mean by kind of debating.
Did she respond?
Did she respond? She didn't respond. She didn't respond at all, you know? Because, like, yeah, and, you know, it's a lot easier for me to type than actually say it in person, so I had a lot more to say in that Instagram post than I just did right now, but I just feel that that's one thing to just touch on. But
Okay.
To be a black man means you have a lot of responsibility, right? This may be your first interaction with someone from another race, so they will use you as a measure. If they have a good interaction with you, you know, I love black people. If it's a bad one, then okay, I'm scared. You also have the responsibility of, you know, the shirt is where our ancestors' wildest dreams. Like, we come from a people who persevered. We come from kings and queens. We have more in us than we allow us to kind of portray. And I kind of, there's a Bible verse, and I think this kind of sums it up. It means, to whom much is given, much is required. That's what it means to be a black man. We're given a lot, and we have to manage that a certain way. We're required to do all of these things, but we're capable. We have the ability to. It's also at times scary. You know, like, I think back in the day when someone said, "Oh, peace," or "get home safe," they meant it, but they didn't really like think about it. Like, now, like, you don't call when you get home, like, people are really concerned. I mean, just like, you know, when there was just different things. So I think that, you know, there's a lot that it means, but, you know, I think it's amazing.
It's a lot of things for me, but two things that came into my mind as I was thinking about it when they were talking. I completely agree. Like, we have responsibility, and it may not always seem like that's fair, or that that's the right thing to place onto someone that has these that doesn't even necessarily know exactly where they are in their own life. But I've been given so many things by people that look like me and are me and my family that I couldn't be true to myself if I didn't give back in some type of way. If I didn't dedicate myself to being able to do that. And that doesn't mean sacrificing everything that I am in order to do that, but that means being able to balance and understand what it is that I can give to my people in order to fulfill myself. And when I give to my people, I do fulfill myself, and that's important for me. And the second thing is, I think it's our responsibility again to be as free as possible and to explore what really makes us us. I think we'll probably be talking about this later, but I don't have a place to call back to. I don't have origins in order to say that my people did this. Like, as far as back as I can go, and slavery is not a good place to go back all the time, but we can pull good things from it. But as much as I can as possible, I want to say to myself that all these steps and all these years that built up to me being here right now, I have to at least try my best to be as happy as I can to fulfill what I think for myself is important and matters and makes me happy.
Wow. In my head, I had mad pessimistic views right now. But I try to keep it short and sweet. Hopefully. Actually, one of the first things that came to mind about being a man was having this responsibility of being a black man was having this responsibility to kind of break down the stereotypes that we currently live under, and some of the stereotypes that we kind of live through or that we live ourselves, right? So, as far as like what we identify as being masculine and what we identify as being a strong black man, some of the things that we kind of stifle ourselves in doing as far as being in touch with our emotions. Sharing ourselves with other men because, well, it's gay to tell your homeboy you love him. Like trying to break down those stereotypes and those expectations of us and try to let the people know, let the world know that we are a complete person. And I think that's the one thing that we don't have an image of ourselves, that we're a complete individual. We just have it as we have to be one type of individual, which is a strong backbone supporting person that cannot show emotion, cannot ask for support, cannot ask for help. And I think that we need to change that because I don't want my son, my nephew, or whoever to have this mindset that I find is very toxic. So,
I guess for me, I come from it from a very basic way, as in, to me, to be a black man in society is to exist and live as any other human being, knowing what I had to go through, like my ancestors, my people. So it's not just saying that we have a responsibility to do certain things, is you have a responsibility just to be you, but understand why things might work against you, knowing your history. You don't have to know everything, but just know, simply because of the color of your skin, you're going to be prejudged, you're going to have opportunities where doors are closed on you. But for me, I just need you to be the best person that you are and what you want to do. Not so much holding them to a standard, but just making sure they understand, hey, do what you want in a sense. And it might come off as kind of like hippy-dippy, because funnily enough, I'm not a very hippy-dippy person, like everything is life. I ain't ready for all of that. But I just need people to be who they want to be. Like, most recently, somebody who has gained a ton of respect for me is Tyler, the Creator, because he had a specific line when he said he could do all these other things, all these other stereotypes of what a black person could be, but he had to be himself. So other kids could look at him, whether they agree with what he's doing or not, just knowing to themselves, oh, I could do what I want.
That's a new album, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I just want people to understand, be whoever you want to be, but understand where your people came from and what they had to go through.
It's okay. So I want to read these comments and then I'm going to ask a question that someone asked, but I have a question too. Mako's saying, to me, it means to constantly feel the need to stifle my personality and what are considered to be softer qualities. Also, a constant state of fear and self-awareness. Naturally, Professional is asking, where do you find security in being a black man? How can you suggest others can empower themselves in the state of their black manhood? You want me to read it again?
That's a good
All right, one more time. Where do you find security in being a black man? How can you suggest others can empower themselves in the state of their black manhood?
I think I think the first part is that you have to be secure within yourself. Now, that's not easy. It's easy to say. Right. It's not that easy. And then you have to have a group of people around you. You always talk about your circle, but you have to have people around you who promote what you're doing, support what you're doing, but also be able to say, like, look, you're not doing things the right way and things like that. And then also just to kind of, we have to get over this where we don't share emotions. I've said this on other interviews, like, I didn't hear I love you from my father until I was 30. So it's like, that whole, like, I probably looked at the phone for a very long time. I don't remember hearing much after that. think he probably just hung up because it wasn't talking. It's just something. It's like, but that doesn't happen. I work with kids who don't look like me, and you know, the kid will trip over the basketball, and they're like, "I love you. You're great. You're trying hard." Like that's not happen. That don't happen from us. Like we have a way we operate with each other, and we got to change that.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. I thought you were gonna say something. Man, forgot because I was looking at you. I forgot the question I was gonna ask. Oh yes, emotion. It's interesting how we're defining emotion, because I think when we watch a game, when we're listening to music, we have emotional responses to it, right? We're like, damn, that shit is whatever you're cheering. That's an emotion. But it's interesting how we're defining emotion as maybe in a different way as opposed to I think we do show. I think
We show
men show emotion. How the way it's
vulnerability
denoted.
is the
That's
problem.
I think
It's
that
making sure that
Yeah.
if, like, I know for me personally, there's a certain standard that I've set for when I'm doing something. So if I said, okay, we're doing this, there's a standard that I set. I was working on a project with some people. I was not able to dedicate the time that I usually have. So like when I was speaking to them saying, hey, like this isn't the level of work that I'm used to. And people were saying, no, like you've been doing so great. For me, like I actually started crying. I was like, if this is the level that y'all settling from for me, imagine if y'all saw me when I had 20 hours a week to dedicate to this thing. So it's like, and everybody was kind of like, why are you so kind of emotional about something like that? I'm like, because we together on a project. Like, I'm supposed to want the betterment for everybody in this. And if I think I'm not pulling my weight, I should show emotion about it. But like everybody it just threw them off. Like, no, people don't show emotion for something like that. And I was like, that's how I was taught growing up.
But that situation, it sounds like also required a sense of leadership and like for you to kind of take some type of leader, some type of charge. Again, something that we as men are expected to do. So that type of expression of emotion, we often look at it as something being passionate or you being driven, all those things. But when it comes to being emotional for something outside of that role of being the initiator or someone that to take charge, that's where we kind of stray from. So I feel like when we display our emotions, where what's acceptable with our emotions is usually situational. Like, oh, you cry because you lost a game. Well, it's a sport. It's a manly man thing, right? You know, crying for a loss of your homeboy. That's you get that one pass. But there's not consistency with having that same emotion across the board.
You're not gonna get that many passes.
Right, exactly. You're not getting many passes. It's like save your tears.
Real quick, Mario's saying Tyler high key might be one of the most important black figures of the past decade or so. And then Vincent is saying, I just want to thank you all for making efforts to enlighten and empower those who seek a power larger than themselves. There is power in Caps Lock, where sober-minded men come together to solve everyday inequities. Just keep in mind, brethren, keep God in the center. So, is it possible for you to think of yourself outside of a racial way? So as I'm just a man. Is it possible in the way in your every, and of course I'm not saying that this is because you think this and every other black person or in the world thinks this, but in your everyday life, is it possible for you to think yourself outside of a black identity or commitment to blackness?
I think you try to. I think you can, and I think you try to, but as soon as you walk outside,
you're reminded.
You're reminded, right? So I mean, like it says, we're made in His image. We don't know what. So I feel like I am a man, but then if you walk outside, it's like, and you do something, it's always related to that, right? It's not because just how if you have a business, it's a small black business. It's not just a small business.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like you have to, if you apply for something, you check the minority so you can get all these different things. We can't just have a business. Now there's also reasons why those things are in place. So it's, you probably wake up in the morning and you realize, and then you walk outside and that probably comes.
You go ahead.
Appreciate it, brother. No, I don't. And at the same time, I don't know if I really want to. And personally for me. And I had to reiterate what you said earlier. I don't speak for all black men. I speak for myself. And I say that to say, I, going through my entire life for a while up until right before college, didn't really see too much of like me as being a black man. I just saw myself as a man. And then when I got to college, it was that stark like me getting stopped with police because I was a track athlete and I was wearing baggy clothes, and then me going to parties, and then me only one getting stopped because I'm coming out of the party and other people walking right past and not having an issue. They were white, like situations like that. I'm like, okay, my blackness is becoming more aware, problematically through, which was a problem because it was mainly through negative situations.
Right.
Then I started trying to kind of say like there are positives with this and understand that a lot more, and understand like my blackness is more whole than this, is more full than this. There's more elements to it. There's more things to this. And now that I've gotten to that point where I've started to understand a little bit more, like I still have a lot of growing to do. I'm not old by any means, but now that I'm starting to settle into it a little bit more, I feel very good and confident and in love with this blackness that I found. And I would hope that over time that my children didn't have to necessarily go out and see themselves as just being a black man. But I don't necessarily know if that's also a restraining thing. For me, it's not. It's a liberating thing. But for some people, it might be a restraining thing because they might see themselves as like, if I stack on black on top of this thing, then I can't be other things. Mm-hmm. For me personally, when I think of myself as being a black man, I think of myself as being able to do almost anything. And I mean, one that comes in the caveat that like I'm a man and I have privileges that other people don't, namely women, and also the fact that women have guided me in this journey so much more than I give them credit for. I will say, like in every single respect of every single aspect of my life. But when I think about myself as being a black man, I find that comforting and I find that liberating for myself.
I find it professionally challenging.
Oh yeah, well, there's that.
I
avoided all of that.
And I'll just share.
Milo coming in with you.
My bad, guys.
I mean, it's
But yeah, I do
You're
find
good.
it professionally challenging, and I can say like, especially as a therapist, and we represent a very small percentage as a whole. I sat there on Psychology Today, like making my profile, and I was like, should I put down like as far as demographic interest, blacks, like legit, like you know what I'm saying? It has like they ask you, what is your specialty and demographic of interest? You'll say, LGBT community, trans, couples, whatever, blacks. And I sat there and I was like, yo, if I put this down here, will I automatically cut the potential clients that I have in half? You know what I'm saying? Because now when I have it down there, does that mean that someone that's not black is gonna look at it and be like, he doesn't speak for me, or he wouldn't be able to understand what I'm going through. You know what I'm saying? I think I evidently actually kept it as black and just hoped and crossed my fingers that they just read my profile and assumed that, I do therapy for everybody. But I wanted to make sure that I included people that are black because we don't go for therapy. But me sitting there thinking that to myself also made me realize how challenging it is in the profession, or as a professional, about what it is to be yourself and also be black. And try to reach out to a demographic in the community that's, for me at least, kind of in hiding when it comes to therapy.
And when it comes to therapy, too, there's also a class component to it, because which people, from a class perspective, would most likely go to therapy? Poor people probably don't have the means, right? Don't know might not even know what therapy is, right? Access to it in many ways. So there's also like a class component to that, on top of the racial or ethnic and all these other labels and identities. I see a lot of new people are tuning in and getting on. Please feel free to ask comments or ask questions, make comments. English is my second language. But yeah, so feel free.
What language you got your degrees in?
So that's not important right now. But yeah, so did you want to say something? I feel like you want to say something.
I think I'm good for now.
Good for now.
Next question.
So a question was posed. Do you think men in general have trouble with vulnerability?
Of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course.
I would say because just for the fact that it took me until like my sophomore year in college to actually be comfortable with, because I had a hard time expressing myself all through middle school, high school, college, and then when I discovered that I enjoyed writing poetry, it was even hard for me to actually want to read my poetry out loud because I didn't want to feel vulnerable. I didn't want people inside of my mind and inside of my thoughts and how I felt. So I would say that for me personally, I did have a problem with being vulnerable, but it was until that I got involved with other groups and sought out other poets like myself at Cheney University, and we had this little organization where every week we would meet and read our poetry. And then when I seen them reading theirs out loud and using their phones and just so comfortable with it, I was like, you know what, maybe it's finally my time to step out of my shell and to get comfortable with this, because I have a lot to say and I just didn't know how to say it in person. But when I put it on paper, it was a lot easier for me to connect my thoughts. And so then that's when I used that platform to actually get comfortable with poetry and, you know, getting comfortable with creative expression, because I feel like our talents do inspire our youth, and our talents are what really get those juices flowing, and creative expression is the biggest means of communication that we have.
Quick question. You said it wasn't until you had to say it out loud that then you were thinking about that vulnerability.
Yes.
So do you think that maybe people are vulnerable, but in a private setting? So like when you're at home by yourself, you know you weird by yourself doing weird things.
Ain't nobody gonna see
right? And nobody gonna see you, nobody gonna hear you. So the ability to be vulnerable is very much there. We do it, right?
Yeah.
But it's something about the public or
Right. I think it's
The
situational.
other
Yeah.
situational,
And
right?
being around other people, you might feel a little self-conscious
Or judged.
or judged.
Judged.
Yeah,
Embarrassed
about what
too.
you're doing.
You're open to their opinions. That's the
Right.
biggest thing.
And
Now that they can see, they can say about it. When you're just you at home, the only person who knows is you.
Right.
When it's just you and maybe one other friend, is this trust between you and that friend.
and
Right.
even then when you're by yourself you might be like, oh shit, am I saying this? Am I thinking
Yeah,
this?
and that's what I was going to say. I think the weird part of that is that either in private we might feel comfortable doing it, but once we get in public, we attribute that behavior that we did in private as being something weird, odd, uncomfortable, and so forth. I'm like, Dad, you got to change the narrative of what you're doing and make it consistent. If you're going to feel comfortable in private doing this, you need to keep that definition consistent when you do it in public. And we
Consistency
don't.
is one of the biggest
And
issues.
right, we're not consistent. We're not consistent.
That consistency is important because I was just thinking about what you said. When you think about, like, generally black men can be attributed to, especially at these levels, that because we're privileged in the sense that we all have a very good, at least a solid education. And in that fact, we're thought of as leaders in certain points. That leadership starts to get broken down when you see certain aspects of a man, at least as I've seen in certain social situations. So someone might become to you like you're being vulnerable leads to you not being an effective leader. And I wonder if that's kind of plays into, you know, actually being less. I mean, I would think vulnerability would help you be a better leader because you're being honest and open with people. But that's not always attributed in the same way. You know,
That's huge.
Exactly what you just said. So
Because I mean, I think when we're around people, we're one dimensional, right? Like this is who we are. We're a strong person and whatever like this. But we cannot have all the other emotions or things because that may be perceived as whatever it may be. No one's one dimensional. We may operate a certain way around certain people, but we should be able to be who we are around anybody.
I think there's two things. One is, like you said, we shy away from being complex individuals. We don't want to be known, all these different facets that make you the individual that you are. But also, kind of touching on what you said, what is the norm for a black man? Like, what is the norm? For most other races, what is the norm? That's the biggest question. Because a white person, if a white person is just average, you know, just doing anything,
They are the norm.
they're just doing
They
that's
are
it.
the norm.
That's just normal. When you're black, you're either underperforming or you had to fight the struggle to be up here, so you have to be the leader. And it's like, what if I just wanted to be on the team? Like, what if I just wanted to come off the bench and, you know, help out a little bit?
I want to be the sixth one.
Yeah. You're either the guy who never made it to the team or you got to be the franchise, all because you're black.
That's one for the flag. That's what I mean to do with the towel.
So we have a couple of questions, and Logan Calderon, I'm gonna get to your question, but I really want to ask this one. So Dr. TJ, is that right?
That's TJ.
All right, man. Shout out to Dr. Doctor. I said English is my second language, but y'all don't believe me. All right, so Doctor said, we've heard of white privilege. Recently, I've heard of someone use the phrase black privilege. As a black man, what does that mean? What does that mean to you? So, how do you conceptualize this idea of black privilege? Because I've heard this actually more and more recently.
I mean, people cheer me more when I dance. Like, I guess
we have different privileges. We have very different privileges.
What the privilege means.
So we have like,
think about it. Yeah.
I mean, like, think about it. Like, I talk about this a lot. I do not use the N word at all, but we are the only ones who can use that, right? That is a privilege. Is it a good or bad or different? But because think about it, if someone else says it, we're ready to pop off on any and everybody who uses it. But then again, there are certain things that other people can do that we're upset about. I don't think it's necessarily a privilege. They may think it's a privilege. They may think, a white person may think that just because I can go get along without any problems, that's not a privilege. That's my right. It's what I should do because I've worked in my credit and yada yada yada. But I could have the same thing, and just because I walk in and like this, it's different. And then there's I think we have tons of privileges because I can do stuff that people I know who don't look like me can't do. Like, I tell people, like, they'll say, "Oh, can you do this?" Yeah, I'm Nigerian. I can get it done. That's how I operate.
Then this is
Is it a privilege because other people can't? I think, to me, that other people can't do what I can do.
So I can't.
Now, I'm not saying
I guess we all define our own privilege.
Yeah, so everybody has different.
I like
Exactly.
this abstract. As in,
Right.
with the example of, say, just a white person walking in to get a loan, it's not abstract. They go in, statistically, they're more likely to get that loan.
Right.
Because it's
Yeah.
systematic.
Yeah.
Right? So
But
yeah,
then that's the thing.
yeah.
My reason with the, like, does black privilege exist? I agree with you. Yes. But then my biggest thing is the word privilege. Like, what are the
I
privileges?
don't think it's
Like,
actually like.
are they economic privileges? Are they societal privileges? Like,
So we're calling anything a privilege now?
No, I don't think that's
white
the right
folks-
term.
Yeah, I don't think it's the
Yeah,
right term.
that's the
I
thing.
feel like white people think that we have privileges that they have.
well,
And I think they attribute
Yeah.
what they expect, like, oh man, you should be able to do this. So pick up yourself by the bootstraps, like those type of things that you're where you are
hate
now.
bootstraps.
That's what
Bootstraps?
Yeah, but I'm saying I hate that term. But I'm saying I feel like
Bootstraps.
Oh,
yeah, I don't know if I said it right.
No, you
Yeah,
did.
yeah.
No, you did.
You're
We
good.
just don't
But
have it.
we don't got them. Yeah, I don't want to tell them. So like, but I'm saying when I think about privilege and I hear it, I think about the privilege that white folks say about blacks, about where they are, where we are now as black men or black people, and and the expectation that you're good, you got this, you should have this. When in reality, that's not even remotely close. When it comes to now the smaller things, as far as what you're able to do as an individual, I do think that in itself that does play a part of us having an advantage. But I fundamentally do not feel like we have privilege.
What do
Like
you
it's
mean
not
by
resonating. Like he just mentioned, like what he's able to do in being Nigerian.
I mean, like, think about it like this. So if you look at the NBA right now, right?
Right.
You're not going to any game to see somebody who is not black.
Right.
But, so that's an advantage. That's not a
sports, man.
privilege.
Let me hear. Let me hear.
So that's
Wait, brothers.
So no, that's what I'm saying. So I'm saying you go from it. That's an advantage. Now,
I can contact that. Who
is that a
coaching?
privilege? No, it's not a privilege. It's just actual truth. It's an advantage. Like, I know I can run faster, or I can do certain things faster.
So someone
That's
said real quick, there's a difference between ability and privilege. I just want to throw that out
So
there.
right,
Yes,
I
right.
think we're all talking. What I'm saying. We're talking about. We're not.
We're
talking about.
term.
Basically, we're saying we
don't have privilege.
don't have privilege. We have other things that we may attribute, or
Yeah,
other people may attribute
Other
to
people
privilege.
attribute like our abilities.
But,
Yeah.
But that's not.
your example of the N-word was really interesting, right? Because you pointed out the one word where I would argue that people can say it. Now there are repercussions to saying it. But
You know I'm about that.
I
I have a very basic philosophy.
Right.
If you get punched in the face, if you say it, you understand. Maybe I shouldn't say that. Like, it's very basic. If you think saying this word gets you punched in the face, you wouldn't say it.
But and that's right. So like, let's for example, like I don't know where everybody gets their haircut, right?
Mm-hmm.
I go into a predominantly Hispanic place sometimes when I get my haircut.
Me
Sometimes,
Yeah.
and the word is thrown. It's,
Yeah.
it's everywhere, and it's like the reason why I think people try to think
And for the record, there are black Hispanics too. So
Oh yeah,
there's-
right. No,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying
Yeah.
is like the reason why I don't use this word is because I was listening to like when I was a kid, I was listening to Snoop's album, and I was Snoop, right? Went to IHOP,
Okay.
and they messed up the bill or something, and my mom handled it or whatever, and I was like, oh, they're trying to mess over this N word or something like that. And I said, my mom like gripped me up like like that was the most strength my mother ever. She never had it again, but she lifted me up and
Parental
said, never
strength.
use that word again. Like that is not who you are.
Mm-hmm.
But once you start to dive deep into it, like most of the time, even when people say it, you get a chill. It may not be the same chill you get all the time when you say it, but you don't say it and you just move on. It doesn't happen like that. This is not a term of endearment. This word has a lot behind it. No other race uses their racial slur. Period. It's not even a thought process.
Mm-hmm.
Perspective,
Go,
right? Real quick. So our culture is one of the most uniquely placed cultures in all of existence, and we're probably one of the most weirdest social experiments of all existence ever, of all recorded history. And given that, having one word in that whole entire thing be of that nature, for me, because I use the word
He's trying to think of the
all the
best way.
time. I'm not gonna play it. I'm not gonna play it. Like I'm biased as hell. I'm not gonna play on that.
Right.
I'm being real as hell. But let's say I didn't, and let's say that like we had kids using it all the time, right? 'Cause they do. I don't necessarily know if I fault them, and I'm not gonna make that whole entire distinction like it's a term of endearment and all this stuff, because that's kind of hard nosed, and I don't know if I'm like I say it in that manner, but I can't say that like I'm thinking like that all the time when I'm using it in that way. But what I want to say is that it goes back to what we were talking about with privilege, is that when society is looking at us do X thing, and we're doing that thing in a way that, like, for us makes sense, and for them it's like, I don't get it, or I don't understand it, or I attribute something different than what we're attributing to it, it comes across as negatively. And I can see where for you, and honestly, what I hope to be at eventually, that we get to a point where we're like, yo, we have to think about how we're coming off. But then at the exact same time, I have this really internal conflict where I'm like, I don't want to have to censor myself in order to help make other people feel like that they're okay in that situation as well.
Right.
So I have a huge internal conflict with that. That being said, still use the word. So it's like it's a lot with it, you know. I know it's like all for nothing. Like, it's still there. I'm not even gonna lie.
I mean, but
gonna use it after that.
but technically, using the N word is. At one point in time, if they weren't using the N word, they would call us a black B. So it's like we still call ourselves black. So it's like in the same sense, saying black is.
Black had a definition before.
It had a definition before, yeah, it did. But it's all about how it's used, though.
So I have two things, right? Because I also wonder, because if ethnicity plays a role in this, because I've heard plenty of friends that are not African American, right? Have a different perspective, kind of like similar to what you're saying. I've heard that before. So I wonder if that also plays a role in this, because your mom, she was born in Nigeria.
No, my mom was born in New Orleans.
New Orleans.
Yeah.
Okay, so your dad.
My dad was born in Nigeria.
Okay.
I've never even heard
So,
of it. I didn't even think about it.
And so now, so I just this might be also like an individual person thing. Might be like
It could
But
be.
now, can I say something controversial? I mean, y'all might.
I
mean,
a bunch of people
I
saying
was
it.
gonna say it anyways. Because I do wonder. When I think about this word, it's so usually like we'll say. So why can't white folks or non-black Hispanics in Miami will be like, why can't I say the word, right? And then people will say, well, because of the history of it, right? And kind of like building off Q's point, that I wonder at what moment, because there were so many words that were invectives and pejoratives that were used to legitimize the subjugation of black people. millions. I mean, not millions, but so many words. I
There's a
wonder
plethora of
at
words,
what
this one.
point was it this particular word? What is it about? And I think it merits historical analysis and a bunch of other things. But so I do wonder about, and I do also wonder that. I wonder if we want. So this word cannot have power without a system in place, right? It cannot have power without a racist structure that gives this word power. So this might be controversial. It probably is controversial. So I wonder if, in a way, we need this word. I'm saying we in an abstract way. If it can only be given power through racism, then do we want? It sounds crazy. Do we want maybe a type of, I don't know, if we want race or racism there, because then this is a type of ownership that a black community can have. I don't know.
Well,
I'm trying to
so
think.
weird.
I'm trying to think through.
I know where you.
I think I know where you're getting at, because I was thinking about this, and I was like, I hope I'm not going to be that guy again for like the 15th time here.
Well, you are.
Hey, I am.
Yeah.
But I do find it interesting that we do have the word, and as you were talking about in terms of the privilege that we have with it, that it does kind of distinguish us from other people in terms of what they can say and how they can say it. Like, we created the ownership with this word and this language that we use it by, right? So that we can communicate with each other in a particular way using this word, and they can't. So if we want to distinguish ourselves as being black, we can simply say, this is the words that we use to identify each other in either terms of endearment or not, that you cannot say. And that's kind of the one thing we may have over somebody, which I guess might be, in a sense.
And even if you touch on, like, there's a kid, I can't remember the name, but they just put out an article from Mass Academy, and they were talking about how the word is just used, everybody's using this word, but then some people it starts fights or it starts this because people will say, oh, well, rappers say it. So you ever be at a concert? You don't do that. I wait. Because if I go to a concert, I pay my money to be here. Like, I'm here. But you just may happen to go like this. Right at certain time. Well, I mean,
You're good.
But what's even funny is the ones who, when they see you, see them,
Oh,
don't. Because it's
they
like,
know.
you know,
Like,
So then,
oh, but I like
but
that.
then,
Honestly,
this is my business.
I know when you get in the car,
I'm going to punch you in your face.
That's the thing. I understand that I'm coming from the most basic, non-like...
I've been basic tonight. Go ahead. This is
No,
not like this. I've
it's this simple thing of why you have to say it. Oh, I heard this person do it. Yeah, but why do you, as an individual, have to say
I
that
wonder if people
word?
think about it in a non-consequential way, and I think that's
And that's the
probably
thing. So no,
Right.
that's my
Yeah.
argument.
Yeah.
If we
White
add a
privilege, right?
consequence, that is consistent.
Don't punch it in the face every time.
It sounds like y'all making me a comedian. But I'm just looking at it from that way.
Right,
If you know this is the consequence, you go to a concert, you're dancing, you know, Uzi says this, and you're about to say the N-word, and you look across and you see, I don't want to get punched in the face. Now you understand. Why do I have to say that word specifically? Like, that's just my question.
Yeah.
Why? It goes back to the black privilege.
I don't know.
Why is it a privilege that I can say this one word?
right, like you got that's not a privilege.
Like, that's
Because you get one word.
I think if anything,
I
this
just
word
said-
is a consequence of like the systematic and
Yeah,
historical.
yeah.
So that's why I
mean,
can't
it's
even
way-
consider it a
Right.
privilege, right?
Exactly, that's why
Someone
I
said.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go.
Other Kayla said, my husband said there ain't no females on tonight. Why you watching all males?
Alright.
I had to read that. I thought it was funny. God, I missed so
Funny
many
comment.
comments and questions. I'm so sorry. Okay, so someone said, I feel like Africans are viewed more positively than Black Americans. I know it's kind of taken away from the conversation we're having, but
Well,
I think it's
When?
true.
so what do you,
Well,
what do you have to say?
I think
it's
as of
true.
recent, well, I think
I
as of
agree,
recent with the comment that Trump made, but then all
Oh,
of
that was the other
the
question. Yes.
all of the stats that have come out after that, like there was all these stats about
And it's
specifically to
funny, the
Nigerians.
stats been
But, I
involved.
mean,
yeah.
I mean that's the only ones I got.
Were they
But
polls?
nah, I don't know. It
Well,
was
we
actually
know
on
polls
CNN. I
don't
don't
mean
know
shit,
where it
'cause
was.
Trump wasn't
Well,
supposed
polls
to
don't mean a damn
Yeah.
thing. But
No,
you
it wasn't
get
polls.
a
It was like
temperature gauge or
actual,
something,
like
you
it
know.
was. Well,
Empirical
let's say
data.
actual, but let's say as realistic as we can be. But it was
Yeah.
talking about how they have higher education and they make more money, yada yada yada. I think I think now that might be the view because, we were talking about prior before, like Afro beats is hot. You wearing dashikis, you're doing everything is black. Everybody wants to go to Africa now. Like you didn't want to do that before.
By everyone, you mean the black community.
I felt that Africans had that prior. I felt like this was something we growing up, and you kind of see the difference in terms of how African families and African American families like lived and how they talked about like education and how they talked about their future and even just associating themselves with African Americans was kind of something that was not, I wouldn't say frowned upon, but it was like be mindful. And that in itself, for me, when I noticed, I was like, yeah, they do live by different standards, and people do have a particular standard about Africans that come here because for those that do migrate, majority at least, I guess on paper, they come from some sense of like wealth or some sense of status, and they're coming here to pretty much continue the business or continue their finances and so forth.
And then bring it back.
And
bring it back.
I feel like
Bring
it's
it back.
like they on
It's like a work
on
ethic.
mission. Like
Right,
Yeah.
I hear from some families, I'm like, yo, my family said we're coming here to be doctors, and I'm like, y'all all knew, and they all became that. Like it's crazy because my family like.
Nigga, make it.
Alright, I just made it. Like, I'm gonna be one of the first ones to graduate with this higher degree. Like, that's not normal. And my family is just like, I'm so proud of you. I'm so happy for you. I'm like, I honestly don't know where this came from, y'all. I appreciate all the support. I love y'all so much. Like, it comes from nowhere, but like, it's so beautiful seeing immigrants from Africa come in and they're just like, this is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it. Cousin X is coming in 2 years. You need to be on. You need to pass all your medical blanks so that she can get into this school. Like I hear that all the time. Like it's crazy. Like
If you're not a doctor, lawyer, accountant, or something like that, like my family has no idea what I do. Like they still don't get it. Like they see awards, they see articles, they read it. They're like, nah. But that's because our family comes like, look, you're gonna be a doctor, you're gonna be a lawyer. That is the like you can graduate high school and that's nothing. You graduate college, that's nothing. Like, are you getting your master's, your PhD? Like, that's how they.
Even in the Caribbean household, they ask you. I'll say this for non-African American households, majority speaking, there is a particular expectation that we have, especially coming from Jamaica or coming from any other country. Like there is a drive that we have when we get here to succeed and to do something. So there's a plan. So like one of the questions, you know, like I mean, you're gonna have to speak for everybody out here right now. But do they? I'm saying. But how often do you feel like African American families have conversations about what you're doing as far as your career is gonna make money? Like
never.
Okay, thank you. So, and what I'm hearing, and then
except for my dad, that's the only reason why I'm here right now. That's it.
Right, but I can guarantee you, if you're in a Caribbean, African, or non-African American household,
that don't make money.
Makes sense. What are you doing? Does it make money? That's a conversation. Like my father, we had a talk, and he was just like, I had to like explain to him like therapist, like I was like, yo, Dad, I was like, look, it ain't the most lucrative, but it's something I love to do, and I'm good for it. And I'll find other ways to make money. Like I had to put that sentence in there. You know what I'm saying? And he felt comfortable. And he was still supportive regardless. But the first thing that came to mind was, are you going to be stable?
Right.
Like is what you're doing going to be something that's going to be comfortable for you in your future? And I'm like, yeah. But that conversation, and I mean, like I said, it might not be for every African American, but what I've noticed in my environment, and that's not the conversation right now.
I'm sorry, just real quick. I put a different caveat to it. Like we're kind of moving into this different stage, like as millennials and stuff like that, where they're starting in the African American community to be like people who have something that they're working with. They're not coming from being dead broke, or if they were dead broke, now they're like stable, so they can move their children into something that's like a little bit more lucrative or a little bit more educational or a little bit higher than just like a bachelor's degree. I got a good paying job at like 50-60K like 10 years ago, where they can kind of move into that. So I think it's starting to happen. We're steamrolling into like people are being a little bit more intentional about some of these things, but overall we can and just speaking generally, like if we just talk statistics, that's still not a majority of us being put in that situation.
And not just cultural, it could come from when you're speaking of these people from other countries coming here, that comes with citizenship. It's like if we are going to this new land, we cannot stay at this level because we're not even from here. So the first people who are gonna get dumped out are you. So when we go there, the mission is they're not gonna dump lawyers, they're not gonna dump doctors and stuff like that.
We're seeing that
Engineers.
explicitly right now through policy.
Yeah,
Right.
because
Well,
even though when you talk about immigration, like for me, I'm operating in business, going into education. If after I graduate, I do OPT, which is optical training, basically for you to get a job, I only have a year. If I was doing engineering, if I'm in STEM, they're 3 years. So after I graduate, I have 3 years to work. Don't need a work permit, none of that. 3 years with companies if I'm in STEM. If you ain't in STEM, come on, man, you got your year. Get on that.
Yeah.
So it also comes to that too.
Real quick, because I guess this is me like I take contention with homogenization.
Mhm.
So Africa is oftentimes, even Latin America, the Caribbean, considered like this homogenous entity, right? Because we're kind of talking about
a
West
continent.
talking about West Africa for the most part. Because East Africa we rarely hear about. North Africa doesn't count as Africa because that's a different part, right? So it just gets just real quick, like, because I think it is important to look at it, to at least analyze that. Another part is Kilan makes a great point about socioeconomic status. We're talking about this in a type of class perspective.
Yeah.
Because poor people, right? Even though I have immigration communities, they're just I think a different type of, even if they're poor.
Yeah.
Like I rarely see homeless immigrant people. I don't know if y'all notice this or like talk to homeless folks, but I rarely see that.
Right.
Poor, like homeless immigrant people. That's really interesting to me when we talk about poverty and we talk about these ways of just kind of living or being. So I think it is important to kind of talk about there is a class component to this.
There's also a way of living too,
Way
because
of living.
of the collectivist living that you have as an
Beige
immigrant.
Warrior saying he's saying Zaga's out. I don't know what that means. Someone translate. I don't know what that means. He said, "Wow, no
John.
invite."
John, it's
Caps
quiet
lock.
for you out here.
Caps
It's
lock.
quiet.
Caps lock. By the way, all that was in caps lock.
Oh gosh,
yeah.
John.
So we're gonna be kicked off Instagram in like 6 minutes. It's almost been an hour.
Oh,
Alright.
damn.
I know. I'm a great host. I know. So y'all get to, I guess. No, but so we're gonna come back. If y'all cool, like maybe for a little longer, 15 minutes, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. But I do want to.
Quick questions.
Yeah, I did want to.
It's a rapid fire section.
Yeah, right. Oh yes. So someone asked, do y'all? Oh, hold up. Michael said, I think Africans are viewed a little better because they have a country of their own, whereas African Americans are still seen as being
Can I chime in on that?
being occupants
A
of
lot
the
of
white
people
man's land.
feel like that. A lot of people feel they can't identify with their culture.
Yeah.
Meaning, like, okay, if you're born here, you trace back, but you can't like, I don't know, go any further.
Yeah.
So now there's Ancestry.com and there's 23andMe. So you see these commercials.
There's a
but
black.
there's
There's a black.
No, I'm not saying you trust them, but I'm saying that
Yes.
You like my post?
people look at now people are looking at that to try to find an identity because they feel like I do not have an identity here because I can't say that I'm this or that or this happened. You know.
It was
I think
interesting.
that comes from what are people looking for with this identity? Because like for me, while I am of African descent, I'm not tracing my identity all the way back there. Like I am a descendant of the African diaspora, but everything about my identity comes specifically from my country and the time that I've spent there. So then I'm looking at what did my father do? What did my grandfather do? Great grandfather? And I'm looking at what they did in this space, not what did like the greatest from the furthest back of my roots. But then that also comes from like family structure. Because for me, my grandfather was very like, why are you worrying about old people? Like my grandfather is telling me, why are you worrying about old people? I'm like, well, you said like we Portuguese. He's like, they're already dead. Focus on what my father did, what I did, what your dad did, and what you are going to do.
Right.
So he's like, he in a sense, restricted me to just these 4 generations. And he's like, don't worry about all of that. Like, you could read about it. Worry about this. So that doesn't mean specifically.
So, Giancarlo, you want to read that real quick? I think that's pretty interesting.
Oh man, there's a I guess another company called AfricanAncestry.com that basically does the same thing as what's the other one? So it talks about they have a large database of African lineages that you can look into if you're interested.
Oh, my God.
Eric, you and I were having this conversation I think last week
That
about the
interesting
tie
take on
of
that, too.
science to race.
Well, so
So to me, ethically,
can I
go.
answer 2 things? So to what you're saying.
We have
so,
3 minutes.
All right, real quick.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful that you can say like my grandfather. I don't even know any of my grandfathers because we don't like it. It hurts. So when you were saying like, what do you look back to?
Yeah.
I wish I had a culture to look back to so that I can have a sense of grounding. Because I don't have that as far as I know now. Because I was only able to speak to one of my grandmothers, and then my aunties try to word of mouth stuff to me. I can get as far back as maybe Savannah. I don't even know if that's true. Like, that's as close as I can get. And then somebody was like, Sierra Leone? I'm like, that don't sound like you're confident in your mind. I don't even know if that makes sense. So, and that's not to say that, like, I need to go as far back as possible, but, like, you know how your dad was like, this is what you need to know. This. That, like, sounds really, I don't know, from my perspective, that sounds so, like, okay. This is what we did. This is how we did it.
Yeah.
This is how we went about doing it.
Tangible history.
It's tangible history that I can look back to and I can say that like I'm continuing something that's really important to me and resonates with me and speaks to me. To read real quick to speak to what we were talking about. It fucking sucks that I have to. Sorry to curse. That I have to pay somebody.
You don't have to apologize.
That I have to pay somebody in order to understand about myself. That's stupid as shit. Like. I want to be able to look back and be able, like, just like you can go into a library and read something and be like, oh my gosh, the history. I can't find that anywhere. Like, I have to go pay for that in order to understand that. And not to mention all the, we don't have time for it, but not to mention all the different aspects of, like, you get something back from 23andMe, they'll tell you and biologists and everybody else know this way better than me, but you get the divisions of where you come from.
Yeah,
it's not necessarily like, oh, my culture lineates from this. It's a whole bunch of different aspects with that plays in, and you can have a conversation on that alone.
For me, so number one, companies making money off this is extremely problematic for me.
Yeah.
Number two, the idea. Think about this has been used eugenics. This has been used to legitimize literally dehumanization of people. You are this percentage of this. How in the fuck can you quantify someone's humanity? So you are 23.5% of this country or tribe or something. You are also 19.7 Irish. But
I'm 100% pressed.
But you're 100%.
So bad.
And this assumes it's true, right? Like, so this shit is, I think that's a whole nother episode of Wednesdays. Alright, so we about to get kicked off. So we'll take a little break and then feel free to join us back. So, yeah. Geez, someone said good point, Hurst. Thank you. Appreciate you, Kima.
Zaga.